Boo. Okay.
Right.
Do you recognize that little thing I just did? No? Okay.
What was it?
So here's what happens when you're living outside of your home country. So in the UK, there is a TV show that usually comes on at like 3:30 in the afternoon or some ridiculous time that only kids and older people are home. Called Countdown. It has been on television for decades, and it's basically like a maths and language show where like two contestants go up against each other. They get like a certain number of letters, and then they have to create the longest word that they can from those letters, or they'll get a set of numbers and then an outcome, and they have to work out how those numbers make that number, and they have like 30 seconds or a minute. And at the end of the countdown, it always ends with So if I'm like in a workshop or a work setting in the UK and there's like a reason to stop and I do that, everybody knows what I'm talking about. But because I'm me and I forget, I've been doing that all over the shop in my Canadian, North American context, and people are just like,
what are you doing?
What are you doing? And I'm like, oh, yeah. It is not landing. So to my British viewers, please help us. Help me feel validated. This is a real thing. I'm Lola.
And I'm Mamuna. Together, we have a combined 35 years of experience within the tech scene in North America and Europe.
We talk about the highs, the lows, the WTFs of navigating the technology industry and answer your questions about navigating tech careers.
This is Lost in Tech.
Hey, Mamuna.
Hello, Lola. How are you?
I'm very good. I have a question for you. We are coming to the end of 2023. How has your performance been?
It is the season to be performance reviewed and give them out.
Yeah.
I feel like my performance has been great. But we can like that. It's gonna be broken down in so many ways. And how we define impact in the companies we work for, or just if you think about personal and professional, you can even think about it in that way. But that is a very loaded question. Let's break it down potentially into a couple of things.
So I have as a manager and somebody who has been managed, I have spent years refining how I think about this. And I boiled it down to a couple of things. Every time I start a job, I believe it is my job to manage my manager's expectations of me. And so one of the things that I try and do is I try and say, hey, here are 3 things that I'm going to try and deliver, achieve, get to in the next 6 months. And I actually have a spreadsheet template that I just copy from one job to another. It's like category 1, something to do with my specific job title and the mandate. Category 2, something to do with like people stuff and relationships and dynamics and team. Category 3 is something that I decide is important to me that you will benefit from. So I'm going to let you know that I'm doing it. And I force myself to define something in those 3 categories. So that when I get to this period and they're like, please write a self-reflection, I'm like, I go back to that list of 3 things. And then I just organize my thoughts around those 3 things. Did I do something that was clearly done for my job? Did I do something for my team? And did I go to a level for myself that you've been benefiting from? And if I can tell a story there, my impact is set. It's not how much I shipped. It's not how many things were launched in my name. It's not how many hours I spent plugged in. It's that I set a goal that I told you about, and I'm going to tell you how well I did against those goals. And if you disagreed at any point, you could have told me. You know?
Yep. I like it. I have 3 similar buckets, except I have one at the company level. So I think about, especially for my directs, I try to do it for myself, but for my directs, I always think about, how do you impact at the company level such that if I need to go to bat for you for something, people know your name, they know your impacts, they've seen you, you're there. I think about the team level. I'm like, how are you impacting at the team level so your peers and folks around you understand your value, your importance? And then the third one to me is like that personal sort of what is the thing that you're doing to continue to learn and grow such that you feel like you're plugged in and invested in the company.
Yeah.
And the company can also benefit from whatever skill that you're investing in there. So
So
similar
very
buckets.
aligned. How do you reconcile? Because we all have this person in our teams, especially if we're managers, or maybe you are the person on this team and some of our listeners. How do you reconcile that individual that feels like they just get on with their job? So they're not focused on how many people know that I'm doing my job. They're not doing friends and influence games. They're just doing their job. And so when it comes to this period, they don't really know how to do a self-reflection, and they may struggle to get peer reviews because they just keep their heads down. Like, I just want to do my job. You just want to pay me to do my job. I'm going to do my job. How do you think about that?
If they're reporting into me?
Yeah. I feel like we always have at least one person like that.
So for me, I am very honest and direct about my expectations as a person who's working with me.
Yeah.
And if you're going to work with me, then I need you to work with me. And that is telling the story along the way. And so at the end of these 6 months, we're going to have to produce an outcome, which is going to have to be your self-reflection. And it's no surprise, like it's going to happen.
Yeah.
That means I have a template I use where every month we are checking back into those 3 goals that we've set. How are we tracking against those? And we are telling our story along the way. Yeah. And so if we get to that end of the 6 months and we're not able to tell that story, something is broken along the way. I, as your manager, have failed you, and you, as my co-partner in this path, have not done your end of the bargain. Yeah. And so it's almost like a contract we enter into. Like, once you start working with me, it is here's how we're talking about performance, here's how we're talking about impact, and we align on that path. If I disagree with something that you've written, we're going to talk about it month 1. Yeah. And we will figure out what it is, but I won't let it get to 6 months down the line, because I've been in many situations where I've had managers who were very unplugged from my performance until it came to review time, whether that was 6 months or a year later. Yeah. And they would say, okay, like, what did you do? And I would sit there and I'd say, okay, I shipped these 5 things, and I worked well with this team, and like, oh, that's not good enough. I'm like, okay, well, what do you want to hear? And I would be scrambling to tell what story they want to hear.
Or there might be recency bias.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so I have the opportunity now as a manager who's been through several situations like that to set people up for what I feel is better success in creating structure to get there.
Yeah. I am so in agreement with that. Something I sometimes say to that person who's like, I just want to get on with my job. I'm not here to make friends. Some variation of that. Or I don't want to do a song and a dance and, performance theater just to be like, I'm so good. In the majority of scenarios I have been a manager in and a contributor in, we are not an island of one. Your job is not sweeping up the data center. Your job is not, being the sole producer of this item. Every single role in tech, and I think in a modern context, is a team role. Yes. And so your job is actually predicated on your ability to communicate where you're at, what you're doing, and what you're going to do next, and negotiate that amongst your peers and your environment. And so if we end up at this stage and we say, I was just getting on with my job, I didn't want to do theater, I would say there's a real question as to whether or not you've actually done your job if no one can talk about your impact on them. That's one. Yeah. The other thing for me is I do think like it can be very easy for people to feel like performance reviews are either an ego moment where they need to boast and it's incredibly uncomfortable, or they need to do this whole humble modesty. Oh, no, it's just doing my job. I just, no, say less. And I'm like, your boss is too busy. Yeah. Okay. Yes. They are too busy. They got too many other people reporting into them. Nobody stops the business of the company for performance review season. Yes. You have to somehow fit it in around your day job. And so please, I beg, tell your goddamn story, write it out,
Yes.
Make it complete. Make your manager's life easier. It is not boasting. It is not ego. If you're lying, they will know.
Yes.
Just state the facts. Thing this, outcome that. Thing this, outcome that. Thing this. List the heck out of it and make their lives easier so that you can walk away from that performance review cycle knowing that, one, you were recognized for your contribution.
Yes.
And two, your boss actually had the ability to recognize you for your contribution. It would be amazing if everyone remembered everything you've done for the whole year or for the previous 6 months. But we got kids, we got life, we got like just other things. And so help your boss remember. Don't do fake humility and don't do like over the top ego or whatever. It's like, just be real. Just state the facts.
You do not want someone else to write your story.
Honey, preach.
Because
preach, Mamuna.
It can be really boring or overly creative in a negative way. It's never going to be perfect. You can only tell your own story. And when you 100%. Have the space and opportunity to do so, whether it's a performance review, in a meeting, in whatever it is, take that opportunity to tell your story. Like that is your time.
Yes.
Use it.
100%. 100%. I want to leave with one final nugget. That the one thing that I've learned in my many, many years now, as frustrating as it is, I think we all have a tendency to expect a lot of money. So like maybe, you're in a job with a bonus or you're in a job where this is where the annual pay increases happen, whatever. One really big challenge that I have found as a manager, and therefore something I try and reflect on as an employee, is when you do company-wide pay rises, there's a budget. It's like I have $100 and I've got to spread $100 across a team of 10. At some point, the amount of pay rise available is not actually a reflection of an individual's contribution. It becomes a reflection of how much money I have to go around. And I'm robbing pizza to pay Paul, or I'm having to make a judgment based on trying to be fair and distributed, as opposed to just think about this one person. But when we go into that room, you can't help but center every hope you have. It's like, I deserve 10%. I deserve that promo. I deserve all of these things. And it's very, very rare that there is freedom for the manager to just act on that purely, And so I try and have empathy for the person who has to navigate, especially if it's a whole company cycle. That means there is definitely not a lot of money to go around. There's definitely going to be a limitation. Outer cycle promos, if they exist, or outer cycle pay rises, if they exist in your company, maybe opportunities where an individual can be recognized. But I find that these end of year bumps and bonuses, there's only so much money that there's going to go around, unless you work in an industry where it never stops raining, which I don't know what that is right now. It's something to keep in mind, context.
I agree fully. I think that in the same sort of vein of having your story and taking your time to tell it, a lot of that opportunity to reflect on your accomplishment and what you've been able to do is almost like you kind of have to take that as sort of like a payment in itself, because you're never going to work at a place that's going to pay you everything that you are worth. Like it's just not like, you're always going to feel like you're worth more, and you're probably always worth more, and I think everyone should be very ambitious in what they ask for and what they want. But the two things are likely not going to always meet. And that's just the nature of working for someone. Like it's that's just the nature. And so there has to be at a certain point, just a understanding that you keep doing the work, you work hard, and part of the value you bring to the company is the impact you have, and you can be proud in that. Yeah. And then,
you have to take recognition as payment as well sometimes. And you know what? If you believe you are chronically underpaid and under-recognized, then that's different. Walk with your feet, that's put your money where your mouth is, and go get yours somewhere else, right? Yes. But I do think it can be very, people can get very frustrated. I have seen it this time of year. It's like, they didn't appreciate me. And it's like, maybe they did appreciate you, but they just had to appreciate a lot of other people as well. And sometimes that autonomy just isn't there, even in, bountiful tech companies with apparently huge salaries. The distribution of bumps and bonuses is still constrained. And that's like, it's a business tension. You can't just spend all the money because you made all the money.
Right.
You got to save some for a rainy day when like you never know what's going to happen. So, but hopefully that was useful perspective for people on performance review season. We've made this show for you and we want to hear your stories. We have our combined 35 years experience in tech. We have an incredible bank of experts to call on. We are your safe space. So send us your tech challenges and we'll help you create some draft decisions through some real talk.
You've been listening to me, Mamuna Oladipo.
And me, Lola Mamuna.
Edited and produced by me, Michael Bussa, with theme music by 031 Mash.
Email us at help@lostintechpodcast.com or DM us at lostintechpod.